What's up, Math 1? This is Mr. Bainey, and we're going to take a look at lesson 9.4, normal distribution. The essential question is, how can you use characteristics of a normal distribution to make estimates and probability predictions about the population that the data presents? So normal distribution represents a special type of data set. So we're going to see that in the Explorer here. So we have a table that has the birth mass in kilograms. I'm assuming this is of, it looks like 4 times, so about 20 babies that were born, and their weight when they were born. So I've already input all of these into my app, and I got a mean of 3.5. I got a median of 3.5. The IQR is about 0.2, and then the standard deviation I got was about 0. If I round it to the nearest hundredth, about 0.15, something like that. So one thing that we notice here is that our mean and our median is exactly the same. That doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it actually leads us to this special type of data set, and that's the normal distribution. So I'm going to take the data and sketch this histogram here. So the histogram is going to pop up here in a few seconds, and go ahead and copy it, pause the video when you need to. Here's the histogram, and you'll notice that it is perfectly symmetric when we're talking about the shape of this. And this is also called a normal distribution. So when it is symmetric, it's going to kind of have this shape that I'm drawing here in blue. So as you're copying that, the frequency you'll see is for the first interval, just 1, there's 2 of those, and then 4, and then 6. Then it goes 4, 2, and then 1. So we call this many different things. We call this normal distribution, symmetric, bell-shaped curve, and so on, and also a normal curve. And this is going to help us with figuring out probability and also predicting about where the data point is going to land if we know the mean and the standard deviation. So I did mention this in previous lessons that standard deviation does have some sort of meaning, especially when we're dealing with these special types of data. Okay, so on page 420, you're going to see this bell-shaped curve here near the top, and they call this a normal curve. So once either the problem is going to tell us that the data is going to fit into a normal curve or a normal distribution, or if it tells us it's symmetric. So all of those words I mentioned earlier, you'll see them up at the top. So symmetric, bell-shaped, also called a normal curve or its normal distribution. All of these things, they mean the same thing. So this letter that's right here, that's like a lowercase omega, is our notation for a standard deviation. And that's what you see down here on the bottom of the curve. So you're gonna sort of treat this bottom part as a number line, where the mean is our center, and then that splits up the data exactly in half. So you got 50% of the data over on the left side here, and then you've got 50% of the data on the right side. So what standard deviation does is it actually sections off our curve. So I've got a section in here, a section here. I got a very small percentage that's past that. So if this is the mean, I call this right here 1 standard deviation below the mean. And I call this point 1 standard deviation above the mean. And then if I keep that going, I got over here, I call this 2 standard deviations above the mean, and on the other side, 2 standard deviations below the mean. So you'll see these percentages right here. I'm gonna talk more about it once we actually do some problems, but we know how much of the data, as long as it's a normal distribution, how much of the data falls inside of one standard deviation and how much of the data falls within two standard deviations. Okay, and so this is another way that we use that a particular statistic, that standard deviation, is because we know that within 3 standard deviations of the data, we have nearly all of it. It's 99.7% of the data is within 3 standard deviations. Okay, so again, it tells us how spread out it is, because if we're looking 3 standard deviations away, if it's a big number, that means we've got to go pretty far out, and that tells us it's more spread out. Okay, and you'll see also in this picture, the second one, it looks like the first one, except that it breaks it down into even smaller sections. So remember that within one standard deviation, this is 68%. And then if I take those with the next two parts, that's a total of, I forget exactly what it was. I don't memorize these. This is about 95%. I'm looking at this right here. Okay, and so on. So when I actually do a problem, I'll label the bottom part, so hopefully it'll make a little more sense. Okay. So let's take a look at this part B. I'm probably not gonna fill in all of these blanks here, but we have the percent of pennies, or we want to find the percent of pennies that have a mass between 2.48 grams and 2.52 grams. So I'm going to look at the previous page to see what our mean and our standard deviation was. And I think I actually have it here. So actually, yeah, if you look at the previous page, our mean is 2.50 grams. So I'm going to label that here. Our mean is 2.50 grams. Our standard deviation was 0.02 grams. Okay, so I'm going to label the number line part of this normal curve. We know that right here is 2.50. This part right here is 2.50 plus 1 standard deviation. So it's really 2.50 plus 0.02, which is 2.52. So what this graph is saying so far with the numbers I found is that from here, I'm going to highlight this in yellow, this whole area right here, I know that 34% of the pennies that I find are going to weigh from 2.50 grams to 2.52 grams. 34% of all the pennies. Okay. And then let's fill out the rest of this number line here. So I know that if I add 2 standard deviations, oops, that's the wrong color, then I know that I'm going to do 2.50 plus 0.02, then plus 0.02 again. I'm adding 2 of those. So it's going to be 2.54. And then 3 standard deviations away is 2.56. Then on the flip side, if I just go on the left of it, I get 2.48 this time. Remember, I'm subtracting the standard deviation from the mean. Subtract it again, and I get 2.46. And then lastly, 2.44. Okay, so that's how I replace those the standard deviations and the means there with the actual with some actual data points to help us look at our percentages. So I want to know what's the percent of pennies that have a mass between these two. And so I have, I'm going to choose a different color here. 2.48 is right here. That's this one. And 2.52 is right here. That's this one. So I want to know what percent of pennies is between those weights. And so I've already highlighted part of it. It's also this part right here. So I'm only looking within 1 standard deviation of the mean, right? So that means here, I'm only going 1 standard deviation to the right, 1 standard deviation to the left, all of that data. So it's 34%. We're doing 34% plus another 34%, which is going to give me 68%. And as you're doing these problems, don't try to memorize these percentages. Take a look at the percentages, know how to read this normal curve, and know what percentages to put together. So I would like you to try the your turn. That's down here. Draw the normal curve again if you have to. In fact, you know what? I'm going to kind of help you do it right now. So it's going to look like this. Just draw your number line first. And then here's my normal curve as best as I can make it. Right, it's got to look kind of symmetric. I know that my mean is going to go here in the middle, which is 2.5, 2.50. Then I have 2.52, 2.54, and then over here 2.56. And then on the other side, 2.48, 2.46, and 2.44. Okay, so go ahead and give these a try. I would like for you to pause the video. The answers are just going to magically appear here in a few seconds, so pause it right away. So I found for number 6 that in green, you'll see that 2.44 grams is right here, 2.56 grams is way over here. So if I want to find the percent of pennies that have a mass between those that I've circled, it's pretty much everything that's in between. I could shade all that, but I know that I just looked at the normal curve that's above this near the top of the page, and I just added 2.35 plus 3.5 plus 34. Excuse my sloppy handwriting here. But when I add those, I get 49.85. And then since I know the right side is exactly the same, I just took that sum and then multiplied it by 2. So you see that right here. And that's 99.7%. That's in between those values. So within 3 standard deviations, right, here's the mean. So I went 1, 2, 3 standard deviations, and then 1, 2, 3 standard deviations to the right. 99.7% of the data, or 99.7% of all the pennies, are going to have a weight that's in between those numbers. Okay, and then number 7, I decided not to draw a new normal curve. I just took the weights I wanted me to look at. 2.46 is here. I said it's 2 standard deviations apart from the mean. 2.50 is the mean. So I took the percentages that fell in between on that normal curve picture, and it's 13.5 plus 34 gave me my percentage. So nearly half, pretty close to half of the pennies have a weight that's in between those. And the next type of example we're going to look at is, it's actually not that much different than what we just did, because this is now asking for us to calculate probability. Like if I took a whole bunch of pennies and then just chose one at random, what's the probability that I would choose a penny that had a certain weight to it? And because they're already percentages are actually they actually represent our probability as well. I mean, it could be a fraction, but fractions, remember, we can represent those as percentages. So our let's just go to the your turn. Find the probability, I'm looking at number 8, that a randomly chosen penny has a mass less than 2.54 grams. So we know that 2.54, I want to make sure I have the same data here. So it looks like I'm using the same exact numbers. The mean is still 2.50 grams. Standard deviation is still 0.02 grams. So if I go, let's just look down here. I'm going to look at this picture right here. So I know 2.50 is here in the middle. So plus 0.02, which means that's 2.52, and here's 2.54. So I want to find the probability that a randomly chosen penny has a mass less than 2.54. So that's everything less than 2.54 grams. So I'm going to take, if you see my yellow highlighter here, at 2.54, I'm interested in everything to the left of that. So I'm pretty much adding all those percentages. And that means I am adding, let's see here, 13.5, that's the left of this, 2 standard deviations away from the mean. 13.5 plus 34 plus 34 plus 13.5 plus 2.35 plus 0.15. So I'm adding all of those. Let's kind of do this in sort of a logical order here. I got 34 plus 34, and I'm adding 13.5, and then another 13.5, 2.35, and 0.15. These are all percentages, so I got, what's this, 68, and then 27, and 2.5. So that's going to give me, let's see here, 80, 95, 97.5%. Okay, so I have a probability of 97.5% that I would choose a penny that weighs less than 2.54 grams. Okay, because that's on the higher end, and our mean is already 2.5. So I'm going to get a lot of 2.5s, 2.49s, 2.51s because that's our center, right? We have the most of those. And then number 9, if you'd like to pause it, go right ahead. You can give this a try. I'm just going to pause it myself and have the answer here, so it's going to pop up in a few seconds. And for number 9, I notice that 2.44 grams is on the lower end. There's 3 standard deviations below the mean. So if I only want the pennies that are greater than, that's almost all of them. It really only leaves out this 0.15. That's the only percentage that's not included here. So I made sure I highlighted or shaded in everything going all the way to the right. And so you can see here on the bottom that I actually added the percentages together, but I could have easily just started off with 100% and subtracted that 0.15% and still get the same answer. So that's just another strategy that you can use. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. Have a good weekend. Thank you.